Good evening. This is a story about wisdom. It's an Italian story. Wisdom is definitely something that has been perceived in many different ways. Some would say that it is something that comes by way of suffering. I might agree with that. Some would say that wisdom causes suffering. I might agree with that too. And the Bible says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And what about that? Look at that. Everybody has their own encapsulated idea of what wisdom is and how it is attained or how you get it. But this story is an Italian story, and it's called The Happy Man's Shirt. So this is a story about a king that had one son, completely thought the world of this son. However, his son was very unhappy. You know, he would spend lots of time in front of the window, looking out the window into space, into the abyss of nothingness. And so one day the king just asked him, he was like, "What is the problem? What's going on? What do you need? What's wrong with you?" And so the prince said, "I don't even know myself, Daddy. I don't know." And so his father said, "Are you in love? Is that what it is? Is there somebody that you desire? Let me know who it is. I'll go get him for you. And you can marry her. I don't care if she is the daughter of the richest king in the world. I'll go get her for you. I don't care if she is the, most poorest peasant girl that lives, right? It doesn't matter. You can have her." But his son said, "No, it's not that, Father. I'm not in love." So the king, tried other things that he thought might bring happiness or lift his son's spirits, but none of it worked. He tried, theaters, balls, concerts, singing, like all these things were useless. And the days went by, and as they went by, you could see like the rosy color fading out of the prince's face. It was like life was fleeting. And so the king issued a decree. From every corner of the earth came these great philosophers and doctors and professors, and the king brought them to his prince and asked for their advice. And so these men consorted with each other and withdrew from the king to go and think and collaborate. When they came back, they said, "Okay, Your Majesty, we've come up with something and we've given it lots of deep thought. We've even studied the stars. Here's what you do. You look for a happy man, and the man who's happy through and through. And what you do is you exchange your son's shirt for his." So upon hearing that same day, the king sent ambassadors out to all parts of the world in search of a happy man. First was brought a priest to the king, and the king, replied to the priest, "Are you happy?" And the priest replied, "Of course, yes, indeed, Majesty, I am." And so the king said, "Fine, how would you like to be my bishop?" The priest said, "Oh, Majesty, I would love that." And the king said, "Get away from me. Get out of my sight. I'm seeking someone who's happy just as they are, not someone who's trying to better their lot." So the search continued. And before long, the king was told about a neighboring king who was said to be very happy, to be truly happy. So upon looking into it, the king found out that he had a wife as good as she was beautiful, and a whole slew of children they had together. This king had conquered his enemies. His country was at peace. Again, hopeful, the king immediately sent his ambassadors to ask this king for his shirt. The neighboring king received the ambassadors and said, "Of course, yes, indeed. I have everything anybody could possibly want. But at the same time, I worry because I'll have to die one day and leave it all. I can't even sleep at night for worrying about that." So the ambassadors thought it wiser to go home without this king's shirt. So at his wit's end, the king decided to go hunting. He fired at a small rabbit, but he only wounded the rabbit, and the rabbit managed to hobble away on its 3 legs. So the king ran after it, leaving the hunting party behind. While out in this open field, searching for that hare, he heard a man singing with this very peculiar voice. It stopped the king in his tracks. And the king thought, whoever sings like this is bound to be happy. And this song that this young man was singing led him into a vineyard where he found the young man sitting, and he was pruning the vines as he was singing. So the king said, "Hey," and the young man said, "Good day, Majesty. So early and already out in the country?" And the king said, "Bless you, young man. Would you like to have me take you to the capital? You'll be my friend." The young man said, "Ooh, I would love that. Much obliged, Majesty, but I wouldn't consider it. I wouldn't change places with the Pope." And the king said, "Why not? Such a fine man like you." The young man said, "No, I tell you, I'm content with what I have, and I don't want anything more." So the king said, "Ooh, a happy man at last." He said, "Listen, young man, do me a favor." "With all my heart, Majesty," the young man said, "if I can." The king said, "Wait just a minute." The king was unable to contain his joy and ran to get his party, his hunting party. And he said, "Come with me. My son is saved. My son is saved." And he took his hunting party with him to find this young man. When he got there, he said, "My dear lad," he began, "I'll give you whatever you want, but give me." The young man said, "Give me what, Majesty?" The king looked at him in his eyes and he said, "My son is dying. Only you can save him. Come with me." The king grabbed him and started to unbutton his jacket. All of a sudden, he stopped. The king stopped and his arms fell to his side, limp. The man wore no shirt. So what I loved about this story is it definitely was one of wisdom. Again, wisdom is definitely something that is the result of suffering. And I think it was one of the definitions that was given in the beginning of the story. It's something that's cultivated out of many times an undesirable situation or circumstance. We draw wisdom from suffering, basically. It's almost like we're pitted in a position where there's basically no other choice but to learn from it. That's where wisdom comes from living, from experiencing, and many times from being in a position to make a decision and to live to tell the story, right? To realize the result of the decisions that we've made. That's where wisdom comes from. And this story was talking about happiness, which is fleeting, because happiness depends on happenings. It depends on what's going on around us and whether or not we're liking what's going on around us, whether or not we're in agreement with it. You know, happiness is bubbly. It's happy-go-lucky. You know, it's all about emotionalism many times. But we have to decipher between happiness and joy, which is, they're two different things. Sounds the same, but when we delve into what they mean, they're two totally different things. Again, happiness depends on what's happening. Joy, on the other hand, it's much deeper. It's internal, right? It's the internal circumstance that affects the external circumstance. Joy is something that's deep within, that you have decided to allow to exist within you. It's the attitude within you. Joy. It's the spirit. It's the attitude about life, about the current circumstance, about who you are and what you are, and everything that is existing around you, within you. It's basically your current reality and the choice around that. It's deep within, and it affects everything without. And the exact same opposite, basically, of happiness, which is everything without of you, right? Outside of you, rather. It's the external circumstances, sometimes, that we allow to dictate our inner attitude. But depending on the external circumstances, which we understand we cannot control many of the times, right? That's why happiness is fleeting. Joy is the element that is controlled. We get to decide our attitude around our reality. It's our choice. The spirit that we would allow to live within us in our current situation. That's joy. And it can't be bought. It can't be given. Or else I'm sure the prince would have already had it, right, as the king's son. As it was said in the story, he was lacking nothing. The king was willing and did go above and beyond to provide for his prince, for his son. He even searched the world trying to provide this level of happiness. But that's not what the prince was looking for. That's not what he was really looking for or needed. What he was looking for was joy, which starts from within. That's not something that he can get from the king. Not even his father can give it to him. He has to receive that from within himself. And just to take it a step further, as parents, I believe sometimes we need to recognize that we've been chosen as vessels to bring our children into the world, but also to recognize that they have their own paths. And at a certain point in life, we must let them go and allow them to find their way. That includes levels of being able to find their own contentment in life. And what we're talking about in this story, happiness or joy, I can't help but think of, being in the store. And I usually, sometimes, if I'm lucky, I'll get to see this. And being a mom who has gone through this, that's why I can talk about it, right? You always see that child that waits to get into the store to show out because they want something. So they start crying and falling out and having a temper tantrum because there is the understanding that if I do this, then I will get what I want. Because mom or dad don't want to, number one, see me show out in the store, right? They don't want to see me unhappy, number two. That's the root of what's driving that child showing out in the store. And that's the root of what's happening within that child as they're, I guess we can even call it a level of manipulation, trying to control, right? But we have to understand that sometimes crying is good for the kids. A little unhappiness is good while we're rearing children because it teaches them that they are responsible to a certain degree to find their own contentment and their own happiness in any situation, in any current state of being, if that's what they want. And if that's not what they want, that's okay too. But it puts the responsibility back on them and lets them know, hey, you find in your own happiness. Yeah, and it's not always going to be peaches and cream, but you can still find contentment if that's what you want. And the children learn this at a very young age. So we're talking about very young kids and older kids. It's something that's cognized at a very young age. They're able to understand that. That's behind that falling out in the store, because they understand that. And so this story was definitely one of wisdom and one for the books, in my opinion, just to imagine the look on the king's face when he realized that this person that he searched the world over for didn't even have a shirt. Didn't have a shirt. And again, it's not something that you can give or take. Like, this is something within. It's something that can't be given or taken. You ever heard of that saying, this joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me and the world can't take it? I love this story. And so I was purposeful in choosing this story tonight to share. And I feel like it definitely was one for the books, the one that gave a lot of wisdom. And so I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, right? Until our next story, this one was all about wisdom, honey. And so I hope you enjoyed it and you got the underlying message of what was being said through this story. This joy, the world didn't give it and the world can't take it, but you have to give it to yourself.